What if the man installing your cable box once carried a badge? What if the smile on his face hid a violent secret? And what if you learned that the trusted officer who promised to protect was actually stalking his next victim? This is the story of David Stephen Middleton, a former police officer turned serial predator. He wasn't just any killer. He used the law as his weapon. His badge, his uniform, even his job as a cable technician. All tools in a twisted hunt for power, control, and violence. They called him the Cable Guy. But behind that nickname lies a chilling truth and a body count. You're watching Death Row Diaries. Subscribe, like, and hit the bell icon, because the truth doesn't just hide in the shadows, it walks among us. David Stephen Middleton's story doesn't begin with a string of corpses or shocking newspaper headlines. It starts in Boston, in a typical American household. Born on June 25, 1961, David was the only son of a police officer. He grew up around law enforcement, authority, obedience, control. But no one could have guessed the lessons young David absorbed from that environment. Because instead of justice, Middleton seemed drawn to something far darker, the abuse of power. By the early 1980s, Middleton had moved to Miami, Florida, and enrolled in a police academy. Smart, clean-cut, and confident, he fit the mold of a perfect recruit. In 1981, he joined the Miami-Dade Police Department, a prestigious post. A badge on his chest, a gun at his side, and full legal authority to detain, question, and control. But for Middleton, the badge didn't symbolize duty. It was a free pass to prey. He began using traffic stops and juvenile curfew laws as an excuse to isolate young women, often targeting teens, those least likely to fight back or be believed. One of those girls was a 16-year-old referred to publicly only as AC. In September 1990, Middleton spotted her walking along a street in Miami. He pulled up beside her and told her it was past curfew. He said her parents were worried, that she needed to come with him for her own safety. She got into his car. She never made it home. Instead of a juvenile center or station, Middleton drove her out to a remote area outside Miami. There, in the darkness, far from any help, he handcuffed her and raped her. Afterwards, he didn't kill her. He dropped her off in an empty lot and threatened her. "Don't tell anyone. No one will believe you." But AC didn't stay silent. She ran straight to the authorities. She reported everything: the handcuffs, the badge, the lies, the assault. And for once, justice seemed possible. Middleton was arrested and charged with rape. But what followed was a gut-wrenching reminder of how power protects predators. In court, the jury deadlocked on the rape charge, unable to reach a unanimous decision. Instead, Middleton was convicted on lesser charges: false imprisonment and battery. No sexual assault. No time fitting the trauma. He was given 5 years, but served only 2. 2 years. That was the price for destroying a young girl's life. But Middleton wasn't done. Because once released on parole, he didn't stay in Florida. He moved, first to Colorado and then to Nevada. And this time, there was no badge, just a new uniform and a new hunting ground.
After serving time, most ex-cops disappear into obscurity. Not David Stephen Middleton. He simply changed his costume. No longer a police officer, he slipped into a far less suspicious role, a cable TV repairman. It sounds harmless, boring even, but it gave him something deadly: access. With a clipboard in one hand and a toolbox in the other, Middleton could enter homes freely. He could case his victims, memorize layouts, watch, and wait. In Colorado and Nevada, he began a quiet but sinister second life. He'd show up for installations and service calls, charming and professional, no red flags. Behind the scenes, though, the old Middleton never left. He was still watching, still manipulating, still predatory. Neighbors and co-workers found him odd but unremarkable, a quiet guy who kept to himself. But the truth was brewing just beneath the surface, and in late 1993, the disappearances began. The first disappearance came on a quiet Sunday afternoon, November 21, 1993. Buffy Donahue, 18 years old, leaves her parents' house in Montrose, Colorado. She tells them she's just heading out to wash her car and grab lemonade. She never comes back. Her family reports her missing immediately, and within hours, her car is found, parked outside a Walmart. Inside, her wallet, her driver's license, but no Buffy. Search teams comb the area. Sniffer dogs, helicopters, posters, nothing. Her case is quickly compared to another nearby disappearance, a 14-year-old girl named Cindy Booth, who vanished just weeks earlier. But investigators insist there's no connection. They say the cases are too different, that Buffy's wasn't part of some larger pattern. They were wrong. Buffy was never seen again. Her body was never found. But years later, her family would learn she had likely crossed paths with David Stephen Middleton, the cable guy. Then came the next victim. August 8, 1994. Thelma Amparo Davila, a 42-year-old Guatemalan immigrant, fails to return home after work. She's a porter at Circus Casino in Reno, Nevada. Hardworking, reliable, never missed a shift in 6 years. Her sister reports her missing almost immediately. But police find no sign of foul play, no vehicle, no witnesses, no crime scene. Her body won't be found for another 8 months, and when it is, it's badly decomposed, dumped in Verde, Nevada. Police can't even determine her cause of death, but the message is clear. She didn't die naturally. Just 6 months later, it happens again. February 6, 1995. Catherine Powell, 45 years old, fails to show up at Sun Valley Elementary, where she's a beloved school teacher. For 2 straight days, she misses work. Colleagues grow concerned. Police are dispatched to her house. Her truck is still there. Her personal items are inside, but Catherine is gone. Neighbors tell police they've seen a beaten-up old car visiting the house recently, driven by a man they didn't recognize. It's a dead end until February 11th, when her body is found in a trash bin at Lake Grove condominiums. She's wrapped in a sleeping bag. There are no obvious wounds, but the placement suggests a homicide. Acquaintances say Catherine was generous, kind to strangers. Someone likely exploited her trust. Now the fear is real. 3 women, 3 towns, all linked by one chilling thread.
It all starts with one overlooked detail. While investigating Catherine Powell's murder, detectives retrace her steps, her store purchases, home repairs, and recent visitors. That's when a detective spots something familiar in her service history. A recent cable TV installation done by none other than Stephen Middleton. He's now living in Nevada, working as a cable repairman, driving a truck that matches the one seen near Catherine's house. Police search his apartment on February 23rd. Inside, they find a shotgun, illegal for a felon. A strangely modified refrigerator, shells missing, holes drilled. Stolen items and traces of female DNA. He's arrested immediately, charged with illegal firearm possession. His bail is set for $3,500. It doesn't stop there. They search his purchase records and find he used Catherine Powell's credit card to buy electronics after her death. They examine the bite marks on Powell's body and match them to Middleton's dental records. They interview his girlfriend, Yvonne Haley, who was also arrested for unrelated drug charges. She later becomes a key witness, though she refuses to testify, invoking the Fifth Amendment. Piece by piece, the mask crumbles, and what lies underneath is far more terrifying than anyone expected. As the case against David Middleton built momentum in Nevada, a storm was brewing elsewhere. Back in Florida, where his career as a predator first began. In February 1998, nearly 3 years after Middleton's arrest for the Nevada murders, Florida authorities reopened the floodgates. They filed charges in connection with 2 separate rape cases, one involving a young woman named Cosme, and another involving a Jane Doe, whose account would send shivers down the spine of everyone in the courtroom. This Jane Doe wasn't a typical case. Her story was strange, surreal, and deeply disturbing. She claimed Middleton had stopped her under the guise of a DUI check, then later invited her to his home, where the bizarre turned into a nightmare. When she entered the house, she said Middleton was dressed in a priest's robe, his demeanor unsettling and detached. He led her into a darkened room and began what she described as voodoo-like rituals. He muttered incantations, drew cryptic symbols, burned incense, all while maintaining complete control over the situation. Then, with eerie calm, he sexually assaulted her. It wasn't just violence, it was ritualistic dominance, a psychological attack masked in twisted spiritualism. And she wasn't alone. Multiple victims came forward, their accounts lined up. Middleton had used his authority, his badge, his uniform, and later his priest costume to deceive, manipulate, and dominate. He was no longer just a killer or a rapist. He was a predator of the mind, using costumes, power dynamics, and fear to break his victims.
Despite the vivid details, Florida authorities struggled to bring charges on every case. Some allegations lacked physical evidence, others were too old. And Middleton? He continued to deny everything. But by now, the noose was tightening. His past crimes, once buried under legal technicalities and courtroom deadlocks, were now being used to expose his pattern. In court, a predator's lifetime of lies was unraveling. The trial for the Nevada murders became a media spectacle, not just because of the brutality of the crimes, but because of the man in the defendant's chair. A former cop, a cable guy, now a suspected serial killer. The prosecution didn't need to prove how he'd killed Thelma Davila or Catherine Powell. Their exact causes of death were unknown. What they needed was to prove Middleton's involvement beyond reasonable doubt. And the evidence was compelling. Powell's credit card used at a Reno electronics store traced to Middleton. Wool fibers from Powell's body matched Middleton's refrigerator. Bite marks on Powell's body, a dental match to Middleton's teeth. Testimony from investigators about Middleton's false alibis and conflicting statements. But the most unnerving part, Middleton didn't flinch. He didn't cry. He didn't rage. He sat still, cold, calculated. In court, he gave a chilling explanation for Powell's death. He admitted they had sex, but claimed it was consensual. Said he left her house and came back later, only to find her dead. He panicked, he said, so he wrapped her body in a sleeping bag and dumped it in a trash bin. Because, according to him, no one would believe me. That wasn't a defense. It was an admission of a cover-up. And the jury didn't buy it. In September 1997, after weeks of testimony, evidence, and legal maneuvering, the verdict came in. Guilty on all counts. The courtroom burst into emotion. Tears, relief, anger. Family members of the victims cried openly. Some cheered. Others remained still, emotionally drained after years of waiting for justice. But it wasn't over yet. A few days later, David Stephen Middleton was sentenced to death for the murders of Thelma Davila and Catherine Powell. He also received 4 life terms for their kidnappings, and then 32 more years for firearms and credit card fraud linked to the crimes. And yet, justice still felt incomplete. Because what about Buffy Donahue, the teen who vanished in Colorado? Her body had never been found. No charges had ever been filed. But her family believed, deeply, painfully, that Middleton was responsible. They hired a special prosecutor, hoping to press charges, but there was not enough evidence. The case stalled, and Buffy's disappearance remains unsolved to this day. Still, the Donahue family had one wish: to attend Middleton's execution, if and when it ever happens. As of February 2024, David Stephen Middleton remains on Nevada's death row, awaiting execution. No date has been set. He sits behind bars, aging, silent, and watching time pass, just like the families of his victims, who are still watching, still waiting. David Stephen Middleton's story is more than just another serial killer tale. It's a horrifying betrayal of trust. He wasn't just a criminal. He was someone we're taught to trust, a cop, a public servant, a cable repairman you'd let into your home without question. But behind the uniform was a predator, a man who used his authority to silence, dominate, and erase women from existence. And what makes it worse? He almost got away with it. If not for one woman's courage, if not for a detective's curiosity, if not for a few fibers, receipts, and bite marks, David Middleton might still be out there, in another uniform, another town, knocking on another door. We trust the system to protect us, but Middleton is a brutal reminder that sometimes the system is the danger. He's on death row now, but for the families left behind, the sentence isn't closure. It's just a waiting game. If this story shocked you, hit that like button to help more people discover the truth. And if you want more real-life cases from behind prison walls and death row, subscribe to Death Row Diaries. We'll be back with more disturbing stories that prove evil doesn't always look the way we expect. Stay alert, stay aware, because monsters don't always hide in the dark. Sometimes they wear a badge.